new public administration. So all the reforms that we are going to discuss today and tomorrow, basically the objective is to move from the Bavarian model towards new public administration. New public administration, new public governance, new public service, ये सारी चीजें और भी टर्म्स हम यूज Any doubts, any questions from yesterday's class? Okay, so yesterday we started with our discussion on civil services. What is the nature of civil services in India? It's a permanent, career-based and generalist civil service. Okay, plus it is a typical Bavarian organization. It has all the Bavarian characteristics. Okay. Then we started with our discussion on positives or achievements of our civil services. Okay. I told you that civil services has contributed positively to the functioning of our democratic polity, pluralistic society and growing economy. Okay. Then, especially in regulatory functions, civil servants have done a very important role. Okay. Then, in India, civil servants perform not just executive functions but also quasi-legislative and quasi-judicial functions. Right. And we discussed till this point. Let us continue with the discussion. A permanent career-based civil services has provided stability and continuity during transfer of power from one elected government to another. Okay. So bureaucracy forms the permanent executive. Okay. Political representatives, elected representatives, they come and go. Okay. But a permanent bureaucracy, they provide continuity and stability in administration when there is change of government. Okay, from one election to another. Okay. Next. A permanent and impartial civil service is in a much better position to assess the long-term consequences of the policies while the political executive might suffer from short-term outlook and competitive populism. Okay, now basically the main objective of elected representatives, political executive, is to win elections and to remain in power for as long as possible. In such a scenario, they suffer from a short-term outlook. They just think about the next 5 years, okay? And they indulge in vote bank politics, competitive populism, etc. So in such a scenario, a permanent and impartial civil service, a politically neutral civil service, it provides impartial advice on different policy issues, keeping in mind a longer-term perspective. Okay. Next, all India services, especially have a lot of significance. They are recruited by, they have an all India character. They have an all India character. They are recruited by the center. They are recruited by the center and serve both the center and the states. And serve both the center and the states. They carry grassroots experience by serving the center. They carry grassroots experience by serving the center, while and national perspective while serving the states. National perspective while serving the states. They act as a unique link between cutting edge level functions at the field level cutting edge level functions at the field level and policy making functions at the secretariat level. Okay, so out of all the out of different categories of civil services, all India services, we have 3 all India services, they have a special significance. Okay. They have an all India character. Why these services are known as all India services? Yeah, they have an all India character. Okay, they are recruited by the center, that is by Upsc, which is a central body, but they serve different state governments. Okay, plus they play a very important role in strengthening our unity and integrity. Okay, they are symbolic of unity and diversity. So you will find North Indian serving in South India, South Indian serving in Northeast India, okay, somebody from West serving in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so they play a very important role in strengthening our unity and diversity. Also, when they serve the center, they carry their grassroots experience with them. Okay, and their state level experience with them. And when they come back to the states, they carry national perspective with them. Okay. Plus, all India services they have a unique characteristic. They act as a link between cutting edge level functions. What are cutting edge level functions? Cutting edge level functions means implementation functions, okay, field level functions. So they act as a link between cutting edge level functions at the field level and policy making functions at the secretariat or headquarter level. Okay. For instance, if you analyze the job profile of an IAS officer, okay. So once you become an IAS officer, after your training ends, what is the position that you hold? SDM. Okay. So you become SDM or DDC in different states. There are different designations. After 2, 3, 4 years, you become the DM. Okay. For the next 5 to 6 years, you stay as the DM. So for the first around 10 to 12 years of life, you are at the field level, at the district level, as SDM, DM, Deputy Commissioner, whatever. Okay. After 10 to 12 years, what happens? You come to the state secretariat. You come to the state capital. You are attached to some ministry department. Okay. Then you become deputy secretary, joint secretary, additional secretary. Okay. And in state secretariat, initially you are in charge of some program, scheme, project, etc. So you are into project formulation or scheme formulation. Then, as you climb the ladder of hierarchy, you start formulating policies. You understand the difference between policy and program, project, scheme? Policy is a much wider concept. Within each policy, there are different projects, programs, schemes, etc. So initially, you are in charge of some projects, some small project, program, scheme, etc. Then, as you become senior, you start handling an entire policy. Okay. Similarly, you are also deputed at the center. Central deputation, because all the people who come in the central government, they are from different state cadres. Okay.
all workers they have to go for such termination?
They don't have to. Whenever there is vacancy in different ministries and departments at the center, the position is advertised, then those who are interested, they apply for the position. In fact, it's very difficult to get central designation because there are so many people and there are limited number of vacancies, so there is a lot of competition. So depending upon your KPI, annual performance appraisal report and some other factors, you are deputed at the central government. So yes, so basically the same officers, they first serve different states at the field level, and then the same officers, they also formulate policies. Okay, so this is a unique sort of strength of all India services which no other service has. Central services do not have this strength. Okay, the all India service officers, they first basically get experience of implementation at the field level, and then while they are formulating policies, projects, programs, schemes, etc., they carry that implementation experience with them, field level experience with them. Okay? This is something which is unique to all India services. Okay, and no other services. Okay, so all these are positives or strengths or achievements or role of our civil services. For example, in paper 2 also there is a topic, role of civil services in our democracy. So all these are civil servants' role or their function, their achievements, positives, etc. तो कुछ भी अच्छा लिखना है civil services के बारे में, all these points you can write. Anything positive regarding civil services, these are the positives, achievements, strengths. Okay. Okay. Next topic is relationship between civil servants and political executive. Now, what kind of relationship exists between civil servants and political executive? It's a very important area, okay, in any democracy. So I told you that during British times, what kind of relation, what kind of bureaucracy we had? During British times?
Rule-based.
Not rule-based, ruling bureaucracy. Okay, rule-based is a different. Ruling bureaucracy means the bureaucrats were more powerful than the elected representatives. Okay. They were not accountable to the elected representatives. Okay. After independence, the civil servants were, like, we adopted a parliamentary form of democracy. Civil servants were made accountable to the elected representatives. Now I told you that in a parliamentary democracy, civil servants are not directly accountable to the people. They are accountable to the ministers, to the council of ministers, to the executive. And the executive is then accountable to the people through the legislature, to the parliament or state legislature. Okay. So what is the role of a civil servant? Okay, for example, what kind of relationship should exist between a civil servant and a minister, or a secretary and a minister? Basically, a secretary's role or a civil servant's role is to give free and fair advice to the council of ministers on any issue. Okay. On whatever issue the minister is seeking advice, give your advice. Okay. Now it depends on the minister whether to follow that advice or not. Okay. You make them aware of the consequences of a decision, consequences of a policy. That's it. Now ultimately, after a decision has been taken, it is the civil servant's responsibility to implement the decision sincerely and faithfully, irrespective of the fact whether his advice was accepted or not. Okay. Till the time whatever order is being given, it is not unconstitutional or not illegal. A civil servant is not supposed to use his or her brain while implementing the policy. Once a decision has been taken by the minister, you are just supposed to implement it. You should not question, because ultimate accountability is with the elected representatives, with the minister. Okay. So that is the kind of relationship that should exist between a civil servant and a minister in a parliamentary democracy. Okay. Now, areas of interaction between civil servants and minister or political executive. Areas of interaction between a civil servant and a minister or political executive. First, policy making. So I told you that most of the policies are drafted by the civil servants and then they are finally approved by the minister. Okay. Similarly, civil servants perform policy making functions through delegated legislation also. Okay. So while giving their input on different policies, there could be disagreements between the minister and the civil servant. These are all areas of interaction or areas of disagreements also, areas of conflict between civil servant and minister. Okay. So first is policy making. Second is policy implementation. Okay. So while implementing any policy, a civil servant always tries to follow rules and regulations. Okay. While the politician or the minister or the legislators, they have their own personal or political objectives. Okay. So for instance, suppose a transformer is to be installed. Okay. Now there would be a list, basically priority list where the transformer, in which district or in which area transformer has to be installed first, then next, then next. But the legislators or the minister, what they will try to do? They will try to pressurize you to install the transformer in their constituency. Are you understanding? See, basically they are just concerned about their political constituency. They have political objectives in mind. You want to follow as a bureaucrat, you want to do everything as per rules and regulations. And this leads to conflict. This leads to disagreement. Okay? Next. Aggregation and articulation of interest. Aggregation and articulation of interest. Okay. Now what does this mean? See, in a democracy there are different interest groups. Okay, so you have farmers groups, you have trade unions, you have women-based groups, you have caste-based groups, etc. And all these interest groups, they try to influence public policy in their own way. They try to lobby with policy makers. Okay, policy makers includes the political representatives, the legislators, the ministers, as well as with the bureaucrats, with the civil servants. Okay. And again, in this entire process, disagreements arise between civil servants and minister as to the interest of which interest groups should be given more importance. So in any policy, like how to basically reconcile, balance the conflicting interest of different interest groups. Okay, this leads to disagreements. Okay, for example, suppose an agricultural policy should be formulated. Okay, so whether it should give more preference to farmers, whether it should give more preference to APMCs. You have read about APMCs? Okay. So because in the agricultural sector there are different stakeholders, there are different players involved. Okay. So किसके interest को, whose interest should be reflected more in the policy? Okay. This process is known as aggregation and articulation of interest of different interest groups. Okay. So again, this gives rise to conflict or disagreement between civil servants and political executives. Yeah, not in the way that it is done in US. In US, like lobbying is done in a very organized way. Okay. वहाँ पर even you can give money. There are different lobby groups. For example, Jewish lobby group is there, or gun lobby group is there. I told you about National Rifle Association. So their lobbying takes place in a very institutionalized manner. In India also lobbying takes place, but in a very informal manner. For example, all these industry associations, CII, ASSOCHAM, FICCI, ये सब क्या है? These are industry associations, these are lobby groups. They, whenever government is formulating any policy, they would go to the government representatives, they would go to the civil servants, ministers, and they would put forward their demands. These are the industry demands. Similarly, there are so many farmers groups, caste-based groups. All these are lobby groups. So it's done, but not in the manner it is done in US. And finally, the fourth area of interaction and conflict is that inherent contradiction between political control and administrative autonomy. Political control and administrative So basically the politician or the elected representatives, they think themselves as the real guardian of public interest. है ना? Politician को क्या लगता है, MP, MLA या minister को क्या लगता है, they think that they represent the people, they are the elected representatives, so they are the real guardian of public interest. On the other hand, bureaucrats, civil servants, they need autonomy and discretion to function effectively. So there is sort of inherent contradiction between political control and need for administrative autonomy. Okay. So these are the four areas of interaction. Okay, these are the four areas of conflict and disagreements also. Okay. Policy making, policy implementation, aggregation and articulation of interest, and inherent contradiction between political control and administrative autonomy. Okay. Now, this is the theory part. In theory, this is how the relationship between political executive and civil servants is. Civil servants, their function is to give free and fair advice to the minister. Once a decision has been taken, their role or their basically duty is to implement the decision faithfully and honestly and not allow their personal views to interfere in the implementation of the decision. Okay? Plus these are the four areas of interaction and conflict. Okay. Now let us see how has been the Indian experience like. In practice, how has been the relationship between political executive and civil servants. So, in terms of if we talk of Indian experience, okay, on the relationship between civil servants and political executive, there are basically three time periods. The entire history of India can be divided into three time periods. Okay, for analyzing the relationship between civil servants and political executive. First is the pre-independence period. Next we have from 1947 to around early 1970s. Okay, and the third time period is post mid 1970s. Okay. Okay, so in the pre-independence period, I told you the pre-independence period was characterized by ruling bureaucracy. Okay, civil servants were not accountable to the ministers; they were more powerful than the ministers and the legislators. Okay. Now this period, after we became independent, okay, after we inherited the Indian civil services, okay. This period from 1947 to around late 1960s, early 1970s, this period is known as period of balanced quality. And post 1970s, post mid 1970s, what we have is unbalanced quality. Unbalanced quality can have two forms. It has two dimensions. So you had your test today, na? You gave test. How was the test? Simple, easy. All the things which we have discussed in the class, nothing was wrong. Were you able to complete the paper? How many questions? You attempted only 3. You had 1.5 hours, no? 6. You gave the test. How many questions? 8. 8 is still okay. 3 and 6. So that's 3 questions is half an hour for one question. Yeah. You knew the answer or you didn't know the answer? In fact, on an average, in the examination, you get around 10 to 12 theory questions, and you have to complete it in 1.5 hours. So I give you 10 questions. Okay. If it's a 10 marker question, you will have only just 7 minutes to write the answer. Yeah. Like these were all 10 marker questions. You get only 7 minutes to write an answer. If it's a 12.5 marker question, then 8.5 minutes here. Okay, so you have to develop the practice. Again, that's what I am saying. Just knowledge is not enough. Many people know many things, but when it comes to writing in the examination, it's a different ball game altogether. So answer writing, as far as mains is concerned, answer writing practice, revision and answer writing. Most important thing is revision, because you might have realized if you don't revise it multiple times, you are not able to write. You won't be able to write in the examination. If you read something just once, you won't remember in the examination. That's why you have to revise at least 5 to 6 times. Then only you will be able to write in those 6-7 minutes. Otherwise, it won't come in the mind. So most important thing is revision. Whatever you are reading, GS, optional, ethics, whatever you are reading, कुछ भी पढ़ रहे हैं, you have to read it at least 5 to 6 times. If you think that you will read something once and you will be able to write in the examination, you are mistaken. To read only those things which you can revise multiple times. Otherwise, don't read it only. Because in the examination you won't be able to write it. So it would be a wastage of your time. If you are reading something 2 days before the examination and you think that you will be able to write it. Study limited, study it multiple times so that you are able to write something. There is no point reading from multiple sources and at the end of the day you are not able to write anything in the examination. क्या होगा उससे कोई फायदा नहीं होगा. So no use. Okay. So study limited, must revise it multiple times and then थोड़ा बहुत answer writing practice. But more than answer writing practice, revision is more important. Because if you revise it multiple times, then you will be able to write. But you haven't revised it only, then what answer writing practice you will do? You won't be able to write answers only. So your focus should be a revision. And by revision I mean 5 to 6 times, not once or twice. Otherwise you won't be able to write. Anyway, this was the first test. So it's okay. Generally, like it takes time to attempt like more number of questions. But your objective should be like in the GS mains. Your objective should be to attempt, if you like to attempt at least 19 to 20 questions out of 20. Don't leave questions. And this is especially important. People are not able to manage their time. What they do? Like if you have 20 questions in GS, what they do, they generally like write 10 answers in 2 hours. And then in the last 1 hour, another 10 answers. Okay, this is not the right way to approach GS. Okay, so time management, you should keep a stopwatch while writing. You should not exceed, if it's a 10 marker, you should not exceed beyond 7.5 minutes. If it's a 12.5 marker, you should not exceed 9 minutes. And that sense of urgency should be there right from question 1. If that sense of urgency comes after 2 hours, then it would be too late. Right from minute 1, that sense of urgency should be there. That I have to complete this answer within 7 minutes or 9 minutes, whatever it is. Okay. Otherwise, time management becomes very difficult in mains. Okay. So post mid-1970s, we have had unbalanced polity. Unbalanced polity has 2 dimensions: politicization of bureaucracy and bureaucratization of politics. So the relationship between, if we have to analyze the relationship between civil servants and political executive, civil servants and ministers, the entire history of India can be divided into three time periods. Pre-independence, okay, during bureaucracy. Post-independence, the initial few decades from 1947 to late 1960s, early 1970s, we had balanced quality. Balanced quality, what does it mean? It means that civil servants and ministers, they have mutual respect and mutual admiration of each other's distinct roles and responsibilities. Okay, they had mutual respect and mutual admiration for each other's distinct roles and responsibilities. They, like the minister knew what is the function or what is the responsibility of a civil servant, and he did not interfere in the functioning of civil services. And at the same time, civil servants also knew that it is the minister who are the public face of the policy, and ultimately decision has to be theirs. So they respected that. Okay. So I told you what is an ideal example of minister-civil servant relationship. An ideal example of minister-civil servant relationship. When we were discussing administrators, I had given an example. Vallabhbhai Patel and VP Menon. VP Menon was his secretary. Okay, so it's a very good example of what kind of relationship should exist between minister and civil servant. It's an example of balanced quality. Both of them have mutual respect for each other and mutual appreciation of each other's distinct roles and responsibilities. Okay. Now this balanced quality existed till late 1960s, early 1970s. From early 1970s, what started to happen? Unbalanced quality. Unbalanced quality, I told there are two dimensions. First is politicization of bureaucracy. Okay, so politicization of bureaucracy का क्या मतलब होता है? What does it mean? First of all, politicization of bureaucracy में what did the politician started to do? Okay, the politician or the minister, they started to resent the free and fair advice that was being given to them, which did not fit in their short-term political interest. है ना? तो जो भी civil servants, IAS, IPS officers, जो भी free and fair advice, who used to give free and fair advice to the ministers, and if those advice did not fit in their short-term political interest, the minister started to resent those advice, resent those suggestions. Okay, and if the civil servants resisted, then they started harassing them. The minister started harassing the civil servants. Okay, how did they harass the civil servants? Through transfers, postings, disciplinary proceedings and suspensions, which are instruments they have. Okay, transfers, postings, disciplinary proceedings and suspensions. So, even now, whenever a new government comes, mass transfer of civil servants take place. Okay, even for central deputation or for foreign postings. Okay, so on the one hand, the minister started to resent the free and fair advice that was being given by civil servants, and on part of civil servants, what did the civil servants started to do? They stopped giving free and fair advice. Okay, they basically they started anticipating the wishes of the minister. Okay, and they started giving, basically they became very pliable. You understand pliable? Pliable means flexible. They became manipulative. Okay, so for getting plum postings, for foreign deputations, okay, for central deputation in good ministries and departments. Okay, so for civil servants, these considerations started to override larger considerations of public interest. Okay. Plus, to talk, like, apart from this, civil servants started to be associated with a particular political ideology, a particular political orientation. I told you that even now, whenever a new government comes, mass transfer of civil servants take place everywhere in all the states. Okay, because there are certain civil servants who are associated with a certain party, with a certain government. Okay, they have become associated with that party, with that ideology. Okay, and thus political neutrality, which was the hallmark of our civil services, it got eroded. even now, like even in PMO, most of the officials of PMO are from Gujarat. Okay, and that is what happens everywhere. So this is basically politicization of bureaucracy. Okay? The political executive started to interfere in the functioning of bureaucracy through interference in transfers, postings, suspensions, disciplinary proceedings, and on their part, civil servants also stopped rendering free and fair advice to them. Okay, for personal interest, plum postings, foreign deputations, etc. Okay. How to deal with politicization of bureaucracy? Now, this is the problem. The problem is politicization of bureaucracy. What can be done to deal with politicization of bureaucracy? Okay, right. Solution to deal with politicization of bureaucracy. See, in your answer, always the focus has to be on solutions. Okay, highlight the problem, but you have to focus on solutions. The Civil Services Code, solution में first is the Civil Services Code, CODE code. In the proposed Civil Services Act, the Civil Services Code in the proposed Civil Services Act should clearly specify the framework of relationship between political executive and civil servants. Political executive and civil servants. Second, the proposed Central Civil Services Authority. The proposed Central Civil Services Authority should be the final decision-making body on issues of transfers, postings, tenure, etc. On issues of transfers, postings, tenure, etc. If the government does not agree, with the recommendations of Civil Services Authority, if the government does not agree with the recommendations of Civil Services Authority, reasons should be recorded in writing and put in public domain. Reasons should be recorded in writing and put in public domain. Such bodies should also be constituted at the state level. Such bodies should also be constituted at the state level. Okay, so politicization of bureaucracy has taken place. What needs to be done? So basically, second ARC has recommended that first of all, a Central Civil Services Act should be passed. A Civil Services Act. At present, we do not have any law to govern the functioning of civil services. What do we have? We have rules. The conduct rules are All India Services Conduct Rules, Central Civil Services Conduct Rules. Okay. What are the constitutional provisions related to civil services? Which part of the constitution deals with civil services? Part 14 of the constitution. Articles 308 to 320. 308 to 314 deals with services under the Union and States, and 315 to 322 or 323 it deals with public service commissions. So constitutionally, part 14 is there. In terms of legislative framework, we do not have any particular law to deal with civil services. We have rules. Okay. So second ARC has recommended that a law needs to be passed. Okay. That law should be known as Central Civil Services Act. Under that act, the second ARC has recommended that a body called Central Civil Services Authority should be formed. And one of the functions of that body would be to deal with transfers, postings and tenure of civil servants. Okay, so at present the state government is in charge of transfers and postings, है ना? कि state government जो चाहती है कभी भी transfer हो सकता है IAS IPS officers का, their transfer posting, what should be the tenure at a particular place, all these things are decided by the state government. Okay, so second ARC has recommended that these powers or these functions should be performed by an independent statutory body called Central Civil Services Authority. And if the state government does not agree with the recommendations of this body, then decisions should be recorded in reasons should be recorded in writing and put in public domain. Okay. Plus, all cases of premature, second ARC has also recommended that all India service officers should have a minimum tenure of 2 years at a place. If they are posted somewhere, they should have a minimum tenure of 2 years. And all cases of premature transfers should be documented and should be discussed in the relevant legislature. Okay. अगर किसी स्टेट में जितने भी premature transfers होते हैं, where an all India service officer is transferred before the stipulated period of 2 years, then all such cases should be a part of a report, and that report should be discussed in the relevant legislature as to why the transfer took place. Okay. Or whether there was a need for transfer to take place or not, etc. Okay. In fact, in 2014, Supreme Court also gave a judgment on this issue. Okay. All India service officers should have a minimum tenure of 2 years. Okay. And states should constitute a body called Civil Services Board. They should perform these functions only. Okay. But very few states have constituted these bodies, even after the Supreme Court judgment. See, even at present, there is a body called Civil Services Body at the central level. It is attached to Cabinet Secretariat. Okay, but the problem is that it is not an independent body. Ultimately, what it does, it is also in charge of transfers and postings of civil servants, but ultimately it does whatever the ministries and departments ask it to do. So what we need is an independent statutory body. So this is what needs to be done to deal with politicization of bureaucracy. Next is bureaucratization of politics. What does bureaucratization of politics mean?
Bureaucrats.
No, not bureaucrats.
Framing the policies.
Yeah. So bureaucratization of politics refers to the phenomenon of bureaucrats performing political functions. So, for example, policy formulation, law making, these are political functions. These should be performed by the political executive. But again, in our country, because of various factors, because of historical factors and other factors, bureaucrats have become too powerful. They have become very powerful. They not only implement policies, they perform quasi-legislative, like policy formulation functions, judicial functions also. Okay. And basically the politicians, they haven't been able to keep pace with the skill and expertise and experience of bureaucrats. So politicians are busy nurturing their constituency, they are busy performing like political functions. So in their absence, all the responsibility basically they have to be shouldered by the bureaucrats. So bureaucrats become very powerful and they have started performing functions which ideally the politician, the political executive, the minister should perform. Okay. So what should be done? to deal with bureaucratization of politics. What we need is de-bureaucratization. Okay, de-bureaucratization has two components. Lesser bureaucracy and better bureaucracy. Okay, so the fact that bureaucracy has become very powerful, they have started to perform political functions which should be performed by the political executive. What needs to be done? We need de-bureaucratization. De-bureaucratization means lesser bureaucracy and better bureaucracy. First is lesser bureaucracy. Lesser bureaucracy means the bureaucratic monopoly over public service delivery, over delivery of different public goods and services should be dismantled. Okay. So basically, other players apart from bureaucracy, they should also be involved in public service delivery. And so, as part of network governance, I told you that different stakeholders are contributing in the governance process apart from bureaucracy. So nowadays, even NGOs are involved in public service delivery. Traditionally, those functions which are performed by bureaucracy, now these functions are also being performed by the private sector, by the civil society, by the NGOs, by citizens groups, etc. Okay. So these are all examples of lesser bureaucracy. That bureaucracy's importance, bureaucracy's monopoly over different, like over public service delivery is reducing. Other players are also getting involved in the governance process. And better bureaucracy, what does it mean? Basically, whatever functions the bureaucracy is performing, it should perform them in a transparent and accountable manner. So basically, all the reforms that we are going to discuss later, reforms related to transparency, accountability, how to bring about citizen-centric administration, etc. All these reforms would be part of better bureaucracy. How bureaucracy's functioning can be made more effective, how it can be made better. Clear? Okay? So this has been the Indian experience as far as relationship between political executive and civil service systems. Okay? Next. Issues with our bureaucracy or weaknesses with our bureaucracy. We have discussed the positives or strengths of our bureaucracy. Now let us discuss what are the issues or weaknesses in our bureaucracy. First, colonial bureaucracy. Colonial bureaucracy. Our bureaucracy still suffers from the colonial mindset. Our bureaucracy still suffers from the colonial mindset. Of unchallenged authority and arbitrary use of power. So the mindset of our bureaucracy is still colonial. Okay, they still think themselves to be superior than citizens. Okay, and it starts right from day one. The moment you join civil services, you are made to feel special. You are made to feel as if you are the king of the world. है ना, you have done something historical and now you don't need to do anything for the rest of your life. Okay, so that mindset still persists. Okay, in fact even in the training, okay, once you crack civil services and you join training, like different services have their own training, so again you are treated so differently. Okay, you are treated in such a special manner. For example, when you go for Bharat Darshan, there is something called Bharat Darshan during your training process, wherein you basically visit different states. Okay, you meet different dignitaries. Basically, again, in this entire process of Bharat Darshan, you are given very VIP, like a lot of VIP treatment, and you are made to feel very special. And again, because of all these things, the manner in which you are treated, okay, you develop a superiority complex. That you forget that you have been selected to serve the people. So that is the problem. The colonial mindset of unchallenged authority and arbitrary use of power is still there. Next, the Weberian theory treats bureaucracy. Weberian theory treats bureaucracy as a closed system. Wherein people are treated as passive beneficiaries rather than active participants. People are treated as passive beneficiaries rather than active participants. Okay, so we have a Weberian bureaucracy. Okay, and Weberian bureaucracy treats bureaucracy as a closed system. You understand system? System का concept पढ़ा होगा physics chemistry में. System क्या होता है? So there is a system. This is the boundary. This is the environment. Okay, and within the system you have different subsystems. Okay, so Weberian bureaucracy treats bureaucracy as a closed system. So bureaucracy is one of the subsystems and it's closed. It's closed means it does not interact with its outside environment. It is inward looking. Outside environment यहाँ पर कौन है? Citizens. As far as bureaucracy is concerned, the outside environment is the citizens. So the bureaucracy treats citizens as passive beneficiaries and not as active participants. So basically, जो Weberian bureaucratic system है, it is inward looking. It is regressive. Okay. So bureaucrats consider themselves as a class apart as from citizens, from normal citizens. Okay. Now we are going to basically criticize each of the principles of Weberian bureaucracy. And the features of Weberian bureaucracy, and we are going to put forth a criticism of those principles. Criticism of hierarchy. Hierarchy is one of the principles of Weberian bureaucracy. And okay. Vertical hierarchical structures with 7 to 8 levels. Vertical hierarchical structures with 7 to 8 levels between the dealing hand and the minister. Between the dealing hand and the minister. Leads to delays, inefficiency, red tapeism, and diffusion of accountability. diffusion of accountability. Okay, so we have a variant bureaucracy, and in a variant bureaucracy, basically hierarchy is one of the important principles. So in our government, like if you analyze the organizational structure of the government, there are around 7 to 8 levels between the dealing hand and the minister. Okay, so government may everything or every decision is taken on a file. For every decision, for every issue, there is a file. Okay, and the file originates at the level of LDC, lower division plan. Okay, तो कोई भी issue है, कोई भी decision लेना है, a file would originate at the level of LDC, lower division. Okay, from LDC the file will go to UDC, upper division plan. Okay, then it will go to section officer, then it will go to branch officer. Branch officer also known as under secretary. Then it will go to deputy secretary, then joint secretary, then additional secretary, then secretary. बीच में कभी-कभी एक special secretary का भी position मिलता है. Okay, and then minister. How many levels are there between the dealing hand? The dealing hand is the LDC, lower division clerk, and the minister. There are around 8 to 9 levels. Okay, so every file has to move through all these levels. Okay, before it reaches the minister. Okay, so such vertically hierarchical structure, what does it lead to? It leads to delays, inefficiency, corruption, red tapeism, and diffusion of accountability.
So delay and red tapeism.
Yeah, red tapeism basically means delay and inefficiency. You understand red tape? So if you like earlier, the government's files used to be basically there used to be a red tape to tie them. So that's why the term red tapeism, like that's how it originated, red tapeism. So red tapeism basically means inefficiency delay. Okay. And diffusion of accountability, because when there are 8 to 9 players involved in the decision making process, then everybody says that it's not my responsibility, it's somebody else's responsibility. So everybody's responsibility is nobody's responsibility. So even like when I was working earlier, so my batchmate used to sit in the room beside my office. Okay, and it used to take 3 to 4 days for a file to come from his room to my room. He was just there in my vicinity only, on the same floor. But the government processes are such that it takes a lot of time for everything. From when he used to sign a file, he used to go to his secretariat. From his secretariat, the file used to come to my secretariat. Then from my secretariat to my office. Okay. And if in the process somebody is absent, somebody is on leave, I am traveling somewhere, then it leads to more delays. Okay. So that is how the government functions. Okay. Next. Rules and regulations. तो हायरार्की का हमने देख लिया व्हाट इज द इशू. नेक्स्ट इज रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस. Excessive focus on rules and regulations. Excessive focus on rules and regulations has led to goal displacement. Has led to goal displacement. What is the goal of public servants or public civil servants? Public servants का goal क्या है? What is the final goal? Public service, to maximize public interest and to work for public welfare. Now this goal has been displaced. See, this was the final goal, and rules and regulations were means to achieve this goal. Now what has happened? Rules and regulations have become end in themselves. They have become the goal. So the goal has been displaced from public service to adherence to rules and regulations. Okay. Next. Impersonal order, value, neutrality and rationality. Impersonal order, value, neutrality and rationality. it has led to a structural, mechanistic, and dehumanizing. It has led to it is impersonal order, value, neutrality and rationality. It is structural, mechanistic, mechanistic and dehumanizing. Okay. So Weberian bureaucracy is based on impersonal order, value, neutrality and rationality. There is complete depersonalization of relationships. Okay. And all the decisions are supposed to be taken on the basis of rational factors, ignoring emotions, sentiments and other extra rational factors. So these principles are structural, mechanistic. They just focus on the structure of the organization. They are mechanistic and dehumanizing. So dynamic human beings have been converted into static factors of production. Like they are expected to behave like robots, which is not possible. Okay. Whenever bureaucrats are also human beings, at the end of the day, whenever they are taking a decision, extra rational factors will also be there, which the Bavarian bureaucracy does not give importance to. Next, attitude of civil servants. Civil servants suffer from status quoist attitude. Status quoist, you understand? Yeah, to basically maintain the status quo. Okay. They are wedded to their powers and privileges. They are wedded to their powers and privileges. And resist changes. Okay. So there is the attitude of civil servants has not been good. What kind of attitude they have exhibited? They have exhibited status quoist attitude. Status quoist means they resist any change. They are wedded to their powers and privileges, and any reform, if you try to implement, the government tries to implement, the biggest resistance comes from civil services. For example, can you think of any reform which have not proved to be successful or which have not been implemented because of resistance of civil services? Laterally, now it has been implemented. Example would be ineffective implementation of 73rd and 74th Amendment. Okay. Now, one of the major reasons why 73rd and 74th Amendment has not proved to be effective, when was it passed? 73rd and 74th Amendment? It was passed in 92, came into effect in 93, so it has been around 25 years since PRIs and other local bodies got constitution status. Still, they have not been effective. Still, PRIs and other local bodies, there are lots of issues in their functioning. And one of the major reasons why they have not been empowered, why they are not functioning effectively, is the attitude of civil servants. The civil servants do not want to give up their power. Okay. 11th and 12th schedule functions, you know. 11th schedule functions, 12th schedule functions. So 11th and 12th schedule of the Constitution, they define the functions of local bodies. 11th schedule functions deals with functions of PRIs, Panchayati Raj institutions, and 12th schedule functions deal with urban local bodies. So, as per the spirit of 73rd and 74th Amendment, all the 11th and 12th schedule functions should have been devolved to local bodies, should have been given to local bodies. And 11th and 12th schedule, there are functions such as agriculture, health, education, water management, sanitation, etc. Okay. All these functions at present, they are performed by state governments. Again, different state governments, they have not empowered the local bodies to perform 11th and 12th schedule functions. Why? Why they haven't empowered the local bodies? They would use their power. So basically, all the bureaucrats and the civil servants who are part of the state government, they do not want to give up their power, because if they empower the local bodies, then their importance would reduce. You know? For example, most of the functions that district administration performs, the office of DM, okay, most of those functions should be performed by the Zilla Parishad, which is a local body, like it comprises of elected representatives. All the the office of the DM is in charge of all the developmental schemes and the implementation of developmental schemes, their monitoring, etc. All those functions should ideally be the responsibility of Zilla Parishad. But again, district administration, the office of DM has not been willing to share powers with the local bodies. And they have a status quo strategy. They resist any reform, they resist any change. Okay. Okay, next. Inefficient, ineffective and corrupt. Inefficient, ineffective and corrupt. So generally, what is the popular perception? That civil services are inefficient, they are ineffective, and there is a lot of corruption. Okay. Now, whenever you are saying these things, when you are criticizing bureaucracy, when you are criticizing the government, you have to be very careful. You have to substantiate whatever you are saying with facts. So basically, to show that they are inefficient and ineffective, what can you write? What kind of facts can you give? You can basically highlight India's ranking in different developmental indicators. India's ranking in Human Development Index, Multidimensional Poverty Index, Ease of Doing Business Index, Global Competitiveness Report. So basically, in all these indices, India's ranking is very low, which shows that bureaucracy has not been successful. It has not been effective in achieving the objectives of development administration. Okay. So whenever you are saying that bureaucracy is inefficient and ineffective, you will have to substantiate it with facts. Bureaucracy has been in charge of different development programs, and the fact that India ranks very low in most of the development indicators, it shows that bureaucracy has not been effective. Similarly, corrupt. Whenever you are saying that bureaucracy is corrupt, they are fact looking at what fact will you write?
Transparency.
Yeah. So you have to write India's ranking in Corruption Perception Index, published by Transparency International. So every argument that you are making has to be supplemented with statistics, data. हवा में बात नहीं करना. Next. Non-transparent, non-accountable and non-responsive. Okay, non-transparent, non-accountable and non-responsive. So our bureaucracy has been accused to be functioning in a non-transparent manner. Nobody knows what happens within civil services. It is non-accountable and it is non-responsive. That is, it does not respond to the needs of the citizens. We will discuss more about this later. Next. Lack of decentralization and delegation. Lack of decentralization and delegation. At the organizational and political level. At the organizational and political level. Okay. So basically, bureaucracy has suffered from over-centralization of power. They haven't been willing to delegate powers at the organization. When we talk of decentralization and delegation, it can be viewed at two levels. Within the organization and at the political level. Political level means 73rd and 74th Amendment, sharing powers with local bodies. Plus, powers also need to be delegated within your own organization to your subordinates. So, There has been lack of decentralization at the organizational level also, okay, and at the political level also. Okay? And lastly, permanent career-based civil services has led to excessive job security, complacency, risk aversion, and risk aversion with no fear of punishment. With no fear of punishment for incompetence or wrongdoing. So basically, we have a permanent civil service, we have a career-based civil service, and there is lifelong job security. So, permanent career-based civil service has led to excessive job security. Okay, civil servants know that once they enter, nobody can remove them. Who can remove the civil servant? Only the president. Article 311. Okay. So, there is excessive job security. Okay. Which leads to, this excessive job security leads to complacency. Civil servants become complacent. Okay, they become risk averse. They do not want to take risks. Okay, and there is no fear of punishment for incompetence or wrongdoing because they know that the accountability mechanisms are very weak. Okay.
Sir, these principles applicable to lower education.
Which principles?
For these civil services.
Yeah. These are all issues with the government in general, with the entire bureaucracy, not just with Group A officers or all service officers. The entire bureaucracy suffers from these issues. So, because of all these problems, all these are issues, weaknesses in our bureaucracy. So, because of all these problems, we need civil services reforms. We need basically reforms in our bureaucracy. Okay, and we don't just need incremental reforms, we need transformational reforms. Bureaucracy needs to change itself, not in an incrementalist manner. Okay, but a thorough and radical metamorphosis is needed. Okay. Now, whenever you are writing these negative things about bureaucracy, it is inefficient, ineffective, corrupt, non-transparent, non-accountable, status quoist attitude, over centralization of power, etc. Right? According to second ARC. All these things I am not saying, second ARC has said. So write that according to second ARC. These are not your subjective opinions. Okay? According to second ARC, and also give facts and statistics to substantiate whatever you are saying. Okay? So that the examiner should not feel that you have a very negative outlook or a pessimistic outlook. Whenever you are criticizing anything, whether it is bureaucracy or any government policy, it should be constructive criticism. It should be done in a very diplomatic way. Highlight the issues, support whatever you are saying with facts, and focus on solutions. And always, after highlighting issues, always you have to write solutions. Whether it is being asked in the question or not, it does not matter. You always have to give solutions. Okay. Now we will come to solutions. Okay. So we have discussed various things about our bureaucracy, about our civil services. Okay. We started our discussion with nature of civil services in India. Then we discussed positives or achievements of our civil services. We discussed what has been the relationship of civil service and political executive, and what reforms need to be undertaken to deal with politicization of bureaucracy and bureaucratization of politics. And then we discussed weaknesses or issues in our bureaucracy. Okay? Now let us come to civil services reforms, administrative reforms. civil services reforms. First is reforms to strengthen transparency. When we talk of civil services reforms, the first reforms or the first set of reforms are reforms to strengthen transparency in civil services, transparency in governance. Which is the main law to deal with transparency in governance? Right to information. Okay, right to information is the main law that we have to bring about to ensure transparency in governance. What are the provisions of Right to Information Act? Briefly, what are the key provisions? As per Right to Information Act, what all you can do, what all the government is supposed to do?
Request any copy office to send the information to required information.
In how many days you are supposed to get the information?
In
30 days. And who gives the information?
information office.
DI. Okay. So, as per the Right to Information Act, anybody can seek any information from a public body. Okay. Information can be sought only from a public body, not from a private body. Okay. From a public body, and that body has to give information within a period of 30 days. Okay. A separate position of PIO is to be created in all organizations, public information officer. Okay. And plus there is a detailed appellate mechanism. Okay. If the citizen or if the person who has sought the information, if he or she is not happy with the information that the PIO has given, or if they feel that PIO has given wrong information or does not give information within a period of 30 days, okay, then as part of the appellate mechanism, an appeal can be made against the information given by the PIO. So there are two appellate bodies. Okay, which are the two appellate bodies under RTA where appeals can be made? So the first appeal can be made, or the first level appeal can be made to the head of the office or the head of the department. If I am not happy with the information that PIO has given, I can approach the head of the office. That is the first level appeal. The second level appeal can be filed either in CIC or in SIC, Central Information Commission, or in State Information Commission. If you are part of central government, then CIC. If you are part of state government, then SIC. Okay. So there is a 3-tier structure. PIO gives information. First appellate body is the head of the office or head of the department, and then second appellate body is the CIC or the SIC. Okay. And the CIC or the SIC basically can initiate disciplinary proceedings against the PIO or can impose penalty on PIO if the PIO is found guilty. If it is found that PIO did not give information, or PIO manipulated the information, or PIO did not give information within 30 days, then penalty can be imposed on PIO. Clear? These are briefly the provisions of RTA. So when we are basically, as far as reforms to strengthen transparency in governance is concerned, basically these are reforms in RTI Act. What are the reforms that need to be implemented in Right to Information Act, and how Right to Information Act can be further strengthened. Okay. So those are the reforms to strengthen transparency in governance. Okay. Now reforms in RTI Act can can be categorized in various categories. First is legislative reforms. Then we have institutional reforms. Then we have reforms in systems and processes. And the governance के ये 3 component है ना, leadership, legislative framework, institutional framework, systems and processes. Okay. Legislative reforms further can be subdivided into 2 things. First is reforms in laws and rules not consistent with RTI. Second is reforms within RTI itself, within RTI law itself. So when we talk of reforms to strengthen RTI, how can transparency in governance, transparency in administration can be strengthened? Okay, all those reforms to strengthen RTI can be divided into legislative reforms, institutional reforms, reforms in systems and processes. When we talk of legislative reforms, it can be further subdivided into 2 categories. First is reforms in other laws and rules that are not consistent with RTI. RTI was introduced in the year 2005. So before that, there were a number of other laws and rules which sort of promoted secrecy in governance. Okay, and those laws and rules continue to exist. Okay. The first is those laws and rules need to be changed, which are not consistent with the letter and spirit of RTI. Second is what are the reforms that need to take place within the RTI law itself. So let us discuss reforms in other laws and rules that are not consistent with RTI. Which is the law that is not consistent with RTI? Which is the main law which is not consistent with RTI? Official Secrets Act. So reforms in Official Secrets Act. Official Secrets Act was basically it was passed in the year 1923 by the British. Okay, and the objective was basically to create a culture of secrecy, not to give information to the people of the country. And even after independence, we have continued with the Official Secrets Act, and it has sort of institutionalized the culture of secrecy that was introduced by the British. Now, the British had a different objective. British did not want Indian people to know what is happening inside governance. But in a democracy, this should not take place. People have the right to know what is happening within the government. Okay. And the biggest problem with Official Secrets Act is that the word secret has not been defined. Okay. So everything and anything can come under the word official secrets. Okay. Second, first is Official Secrets Act. Second, this culture of secrecy has been further strengthened by civil services conduct rules. It has been further strengthened by civil services conduct rules, which prohibit communication in an official document, communication of an official document. Which prohibit communication of an official document to anyone without authorization. Next, Section 123 of the Indian Evidence Act Section 123 of the Indian Evidence Act 1872 prohibits giving of evidence from unpublished official records prohibits giving of evidence from unpublished official records without the permission of head of department, HOD. Without the permission of HOD. Okay? So basically these are laws and rules which are inconsistent with the letter and spirit of article. So these laws and rules need to change. So reforms. These are the problems. Then reforms. First, Official Secrets Act should be repealed. And the relevant provisions should be incorporated in the National Security Act. Next, conduct rules, civil services conduct rules and manual of office procedure. Civil services conduct rules and manual of office procedure should be amended. So as to provide authorization for communication of an official document in a time-bound manner. Authorization for communication of an official document in a time-bound manner. Next, Section 123 of the Indian Evidence Act needs to be amended accordingly. Finally, as an affirmation of importance of transparency, in public life. Constitutional and statutory dignitaries. Constitutional and statutory dignitaries, including ministers, should take an oath of transparency. Should take an oath of transparency along with the oath of office. Should take the oath of transparency along with the oath of office. And the oath of secrecy should be dispensed with. And the oath of secrecy should be dispensed with. Okay. So these are all basically reforms in other laws, rules, etc., which are not compatible with RTI. Okay. So the first thing is that Official Secrets Act 2008 and the relevant provisions of official secrets. See, many times everything cannot be disclosed. Many times there are considerations of national security, public order, etc. Okay. So those relevant provisions where it is actually justifiable, okay, not to disclose a particular information, it should be made part of National Security Act. There is no need for a separate Official Secrets Act. Okay. Then Civil Services Conduct Rules and Indian Evidence Act, they also need to be amended. Okay, so that documents can be communicated in a time-bound manner. Okay, authorization should be given in a time-bound manner. Okay, and finally, as a symbolic step, generally you might have seen that whenever all these constitutional statutory dignitaries, including ministers, they take oath of office, they also take an oath of secrecy. They would maintain secrecy in governance and administrative issues. So instead of oath of secrecy, as a symbolic gesture, they should take an oath of transparency. Clear? Reforms within RTI. Next is reforms within RTI. ये था पहला वाला, reforms in other laws. Reforms within RTI. Reforms within RTI to deal with frivolous or vexatious complaints. To deal with frivolous or vexatious RTI requests, not complaints. What does frivolous and vexatious mean? What does frivolous mean? Silly. Frivolous means which are small, trivial, okay, which do not serve any public interest, okay. Vexatious means ill intention, something to malign others. So now, whenever the information seeker, whenever anybody is seeking any information under RTI, he or she does not have to give any justification why the information is being sought, whether the information will serve any public interest or not. The objective of RTI is that only those information should be sought which serve any public interest. Okay. However, as an information seeker, I don't need to justify why I am seeking a particular information, whether it will serve public interest or not. This has led to increase in frivolous and vexatious in RTI requests. So people are basically seeking information many times which do not serve any public interest. They are seeking that information, they are filing RTI requests to settle personal scores. Similarly, they are filing RTI requests basically to malign people. Those are vexatious. They are ill-intentioned. So, for example, like in my previous organization in Indian Audit and Account Service, I was the PIO in my organization, and I used to get very strange, very frivolous RTI requests. I still remember one of the RTI requests that I received was somebody wanted to know how many times a particular employee has gone outside the office to drink tea. Okay. Now, no public interest is being served by this information. That person might have had some personal enmity with the other person, and that's why he wants to know how many times he went outside, how many number of hours he wasted in drinking tea, etc. Okay. So you get such RTI requests. Plus, nowadays there is a tendency, one particular trend that has been observed is that whenever you initiate disciplinary proceeding against somebody, so we will read about disciplinary proceeding. Basically, disciplinary proceedings, if somebody has done something wrong in government, you initiate disciplinary proceeding. Okay. So whenever you initiate disciplinary proceeding against anybody, it is generally found that that person starts filing vexatious RTI requests against their superior officers. I understand. For example, I have caught my peon taking bribe. Okay. I have initiated disciplinary proceeding against him. Now that peon will start filing vexatious RTI request against me. Okay. How many people work in my home? Okay. How many times you used your official car? For what purpose? Okay. Such personal attacks they would start carrying out against you, basically to intimidate you, to threaten you. Okay. And this has become very common nowadays. In fact, again, in my previous organization, this used to happen. My boss initiated disciplinary proceeding against one of the officers. Okay, and that officer then started filing vexatious RTI request against my boss. Okay, so this is something which has become a major issue in the implementation of RTI. Okay. And when this starts to happen, what are the implications, what are the consequences? The entire purpose of RTI gets defeated. And the purpose of RTI was basically people should empower themselves by accessing information which serve public interest. When you start misusing RTI for these things, then the entire purpose of RTI gets lost. The entire system gets overwhelmed with such frivolous and vexatious requests. Plus, another thing here is that many times people seek information which runs in hundreds of pages. I want that information, I want a copy of that file, I want a copy of that document. And you need to understand that in government already there is a shortage of resources. There is shortage of employees, there is shortage of infrastructure. And a lot of resources is spent on giving such documents which do not serve any public interest. We have to basically employ somebody, those documents have to be retrieved, they have to be photocopied, they have to be sort of organized. Okay? And all these things take a lot of time and a lot of resources is wasted, and the organization is not able to focus on the job which it is supposed to do, on its core function. Okay? So this is the issue. Now what needs to be done? So reform is to deal with frivolous and vexatious RTI requests. What is the reform? Section 7 of the RTI Act Section 7 of the RTI Act needs to be amended to insert subsection 10 as follows. To insert subsection 10 as follows. The PIO may refuse a request for information the PIO may refuse a request for information if the request is manifestly frivolous or vexatious. If the request is manifestly frivolous or vexatious. Further, it may be provided that information can be denied. It may be provided that information can be denied if the work involved in processing the request the work involved in processing the request would substantially and unreasonably divert the resources of the public body. Divert the resources of the public body. Okay. So what are we proposing? Again, all these recommendations, whatever reforms we are recommending, all these reforms have been recommended by whom? Second ARC. जब भी लिख रहे हैं, please specify it. These are not your subjective opinions. Second ARC is it. So what second ARC is saying? To deal with such frivolous and vexatious complaints, section 7 needs to be amended. And the new section 7 should be read as follows. Okay? If BIO can refuse to provide information, if the request is manifestly frivolous or vexatious, also if substantial and unreasonable amount of resources need to be diverted to entertain the request, then such request can be denied. Okay? अब इससे होगा क्या? What will happen?
We can concentrate on the books. Means what happens in getting means BIO can reject it.
Yeah, then what BIO will do? He will start misusing this provision to deny information. He will say that it will unreasonably divert our resources. It's a frivolous complaint, it's a frivolous request, it's a vexatious request. So we need to have some checks and balances in place so that this provision is not misused by the BIO. Provided that such a refusal shall be communicated within 15 days of receipt of application. With the prior approval of the appellate authority. Within 15 days of receipt of application with the prior approval of the appellate authority. Provided further that all such refusals shall stand transferred to CIC or SIC. Shall stand transferred to CIC or SIC as the case may be, and the CIC or SIC shall dispose the case as if it is an appeal under the RTI Act. As if it is an appeal under the RTI Act. Okay. So what are the checks and balances that we are putting in place? That all such refusals to deny information should be communicated to the information seeker within a period of 15 days after the approval of the first appellate authority. Who is the first appellate authority? Head of the office or head of the department. Also, all such refusals shall stand transferred to the CIC or SIC. If say PIO has taken the approval of the first appellate authority and denies that information, if as the information seeker, if I am not happy even after that, I can approach the CIC or SIC, and the CIC or SIC will deal with the case as if it is an appeal under the RTI. Okay? So these checks and balances would ensure that the new provision is not misused. Okay? Next, institutional reforms. Now we have completed legislative reforms. What are the reforms in other laws and rules, and what are the reforms within RTI itself? Okay? Now, institutional reforms. Now, which are the institutions created by RTI? CIC and SIC. RTI created two new institutions, CIC and SIC. So, institutional reforms basically mean reforms in the functioning of CIC and SIC. Okay? So, first we are going to discuss the problems. Reforms क्या होगा? उसका उल्टा. You basically like reforms are always the opposite of problems. So first of all we are going to discuss the problems. First, increasing number of pending cases. In CIC and SICs. Okay. Around 25,000 cases are pending in CIC alone. Okay. And if we look at the facts related to different SICs, then the number of cases would be in lakhs. Okay. Why so many cases are pending in CIC and SICs? Lack of resources, lack of human resource, lack of physical infrastructure. And why they have lack of human resource, lack of physical infrastructure? For example, in many state information commissions, the position of information commissioners are lying vacant. So why this is happening? Why they do not have the human resource, or they do not have physical infrastructure in place? Because of lack of financial and functional autonomy. They are dependent on the government. They are dependent on the finance ministry for funds. They are dependent on the government to appoint information commissioners. Okay. So what we need is, what we need the reform? Financial and functional autonomy. Okay. So as part of financial autonomy, what can be done? Their expenditure should be part of charged expenditure. Charged expenditure, you understand? What is charged expenditure? Yeah. So expenditure which is charged on the consolidated fund of India, and they are non-votable expenditure. Okay. So they would not be, for example, expenditure, salaries, allowances and administrative expenditure of the office of CAG. It's part of charged expenditure. UPSC members, charged expenditure. Judiciary, charged expenditure. Similarly, CIC or SIC's capital expenditure, it should be charged expenditure. Okay. Plus, they should be given functional autonomy also, with regard to hiring their staff, creating physical infrastructure, etc. Clear? Second, CIC's inability, CIC and SIC's inability to ensure compliance with their orders. To ensure compliance with their orders. Now many times CIC and SICs, they issue orders, they give orders, but they are not complied with, they are not followed. For example, recently CIC gave a verdict that political parties should come under RTI. Okay. But political parties have not followed that order. They have failed to comply with the CIC's order. They have refused to come under RTI. Now when the orders of a statutory body such as the CIC is flouted so openly, then what will happen? It will undermine its credibility. Nobody will take these bodies seriously then. If people know that it is like, let them give orders, we are not going to follow it, then they will have, no credibility would remain. It's not slippery slope. Here slippery slope is not the right word. But basically people would stop having faith in these institutions. And why are their orders, like sometimes, not always, I'm talking sometimes, why sometimes their orders are not complied with? Because they do not have enough powers. They do not have limited powers. For example, judiciary has contempt powers. If you do not follow the orders of the judiciary, you can be jailed for contempt of court. So similarly, CICs and SICs also need to be given contempt powers. The reform यहाँ पर क्या होगा? They need to be given more powers, especially contempt powers. Okay. Next, the quality of orders issued by CIC or SICs. The orders that the CIC or SICs give, they are very cryptic. They are cryptic basically means they are ambiguous. They are not clear, and sometimes they are also devoid of any factual reasoning. Okay. Now again, if the CIC or SICs give such ambiguous orders, again it undermines their credibility. So what they need to do is that they need to improve the quality of their orders. They need to give speaking orders. Okay, term hota hai speaking orders. So they should give speaking orders. The orders should be self-explanatory. There should be no ambiguity, lack of clarity regarding their orders. Okay. And lastly, role of CIC and SICs in implementation of RTI. Of CIC and SICs in implementation of RTI in letter and spirit. Okay, now most of the effort and most of the resources of CIC and SICs is spent on dealing with appeals. Whatever appeals come to them, they dispose of those appeals. Okay. However, one of the functions that the CIC and SICs they are expected to perform is encouraging or taking steps for suo motu disclosure of information by public bodies. What is suo motu disclosure? On their own. So, one of the objectives of RTI Act is that public bodies should make suo motu disclosure of information on their website, through pamphlets or through their annual reports, etc. So that the need for filing RTI request to get information, it does not arise. And this is the function of CIC and SICs, to monitor the working of different public bodies to ensure that they give suo motu disclosure of information under section 4 of the RTI Act. Now CIC and SICs have not been able to do that because first of all they have shortage of resources, and whatever limited resources they have basically spent on dealing with appeals. जो appeal उनके पास आता है, ठीक है, all their effort and resources is spent on that instead of monitoring the functioning of different public bodies to ensure that they disclose information same. Okay. So what is the reform here? This is the problem. Reform क्या होगा? Yeah, again, financial and functional autonomy. Not digitization. Basically, if they have the resources, if CIC and SICs have the resources, and they will have the resources only when they get financial and functional autonomy, okay, then they will be able to devote a part of those resources for this purpose. I understand. At present, they are not able to do this function because of lack of resources. Okay. These are the issues with the functioning of CIC and SICs and the reforms that need to be carried. These are part of institutional reforms. Okay. Next. You will remember these things, the solutions that I am telling you. You will remember after 15 days. That's why try to make notes in the class. I will give the notes, but in the notes everything is there. Then there is no need to teach. So try to first make notes in the class. Because I am saying that like you are not writing whatever I am saying. So either if you have a tremendous memory that you will remember these things after 10 days, 15 days, 20 days. Okay. Otherwise you should make notes in the class. Next, reforms in systems and processes. Okay, institutional reforms we have discussed. Now, how the systems and processes need to be revamped, need to be reformed. The first reform within systems and processes is modernization of record keeping. Okay. Now, right to information would be honored. Right to information can be implemented only when records are there, only when files are there. When there is no information, how will you give information? Okay. So, for example, many times when RTI request comes to a government organization, they are not able to retrieve the file where the information is. Why? Because records are kept in a very unscientific and unsystematic manner. है ना, वो फाइल ही नहीं मिलता है, जिस फाइल से इंफॉर्मेशन देना है, the government officers are not able to locate the file. Okay, so record keeping modernization is one of the prerequisites for implementing RTI in letter and spirit. Okay, so what needs to be done? Digitization is the long-term solution. Okay, in the short to medium run, the records need to be like proper indexing and cataloging needs to be done. Okay, indexing and cataloging needs to be done in the short to medium run, so that records can be retrieved in a time-bound manner. And in the long run, the solution is digitization. Okay. Also, a new agency called Public Records Office. A new agency called Public Records Office should be established as an independent authority by integrating and restructuring the multiple agencies that exist for record keeping at present. So present, what is the issue? As far as record keeping is concerned, two things need to be done. First is modernization. The proper indexing, cataloging, to orderly storage, etc., and in the long term digitization. Another thing that needs to be done is that at present there are multiple agencies, multiple bodies involved in record keeping. So at the state level, for example, we have state gazetteers, we have state record rooms, and we have state archives. Okay. So all these bodies at present, they need to be, which exist at present, they need to be integrated and consolidated to form a single public records office. Okay, this would be a single point authority to deal with all issues related to record management. Clear? Second, this is the first reform, modernization of record keeping. Second reform, creation of a single window agency at the district level. Creation of a single window agency at the district level. Now at present, what is the problem? See, at the state level, at the level of state secretariat, it is much easier to get information under RTI. You go to the state secretariat, all the ministries and departments have their offices there. So whichever ministry and department you want to seek information from, you go there. But at the district level, this is not the case. At the district level, different offices, different government offices, different organizations, they are located in a very scattered way. They are not located at one place. So the like block or district agriculture officer is located somewhere else, district education officer is somewhere else. Similarly, health officer, public health officers would be located somewhere else. So it becomes very inconvenient for people at the district level to seek information under RTI because all the offices are not located at one place. Okay. So to solve this problem, what can be done? A single window agency at the district level should be constituted. Where? In the DM's offices. Okay. So that single window agency would receive all RTI requests pertaining to any organization, any ministry department at the district level. And then that agency would forward the RTI request to the concerned organization. It would get the RTI reply from the concerned organization and give it to the information seeker. Okay. So this is creation of single window agency at the district level basically so that it becomes much more convenient for the citizens to seek information. Clear? And lastly, reforming the method of classification of documents. Reforming the method of classification of documents. Manual of Departmental Security Instructions. Manual of Departmental Security Instructions should be amended. Should be amended, and the following officers should be designated. And the following officers should be designated to provide security classification to documents. To provide security classification to the documents. First, top secret classification, not below the level of joint secretary. Not below the level of joint secretary. Secret classification, secret within inverted commas, top secret within inverted commas. Secret classification not below the level of deputy secretary. And confidential classification not below the level of under secretary. The confidential classification not below the level of under secretary. Okay, so this reform basically relates to the method of classifying documents. Okay, so classifying documents, what does it mean? In government, we classify documents into like general documents and top secret, secret and confidential documents. So classified documents are of three kinds. Either it could be a top secret document or a secret document or a confidential document. Okay. And there is a general tendency to basically classify even those documents where such classification is not needed, है ना? कि जहाँ कोई हर there is a tendency to make every document as a confidential document, as a secret document. This basically strengthens the culture of secrecy, है ना? Because confidential, secret, top secret documents are not to be shared in public domain. Okay. So this system of classifying documents should be changed. Okay, top secret classification should not be given by any officer below the level of joint secretary. Secret classification should not be given by any officer below the level of deputy secretary. And confidential is below the level of under secretary. And otherwise, what happens generally? If the lower division clerk or upper division clerk marks the file as confidential, and then that file moves as a confidential file throughout the hierarchy. Okay, which creates a culture of secrecy. So that's why specific senior officers should be designated and they should be empowered to, only they should have the power to classify a particular document. Okay, this will help in dealing with the culture of secrecy. Clear? So these are all reforms in systems and processes. So reforms in RTI we have discussed in terms of legislative reforms, institutional reforms and reforms in systems and processes. So any question on RTI, any question on transparency, either in paper 2 or in paper 4, you have to write these reforms. Okay? Now one question that you might get is, should political parties be brought under RTI? So I told you that CIC gave the verdict that political parties should be brought under RTI. However, they have political parties have refused to obey the orders. So if a question comes, should political parties be brought under RTI? What will you write? Should they be brought under RTI? Second answer is not given. CIC का verdict अभी 2 years back.
As it is also one of the democratic institutions.
Okay. और क्या है arguments for और क्या है? What are the other arguments for? It is not a democratic institution. People of a political party are not elected. Democratic institution is which comprises of elected representatives, where people elect those bodies. Political party is not elected by people. So what are the arguments for? Well, let us discuss arguments against. What are the arguments against bringing political parties under RTI? How do you define a public body?
Which is a legislative, executive or judicial or which works under the state. Is it?
Okay. और क्या है argument? What are the arguments against? Other arguments? So the first argument, as you said, is that the political parties say that they are not public bodies. Now, there is no definition of public body anywhere. In the constitution, it has not been specified what is a public body. Plus, in different laws also, a public body is defined in different ways. Okay. But generally, the consensus is that a public body is any body that has been constituted under the constitution or any law or through any executive order. So basically a constitutional or a statutory or an executive body are generally considered to be a public body. Okay. Now political parties do not come under any of these categories. They are not a constitutional body. They are not set up by an act of parliament or under an act of parliament, and they have not been constituted under any executive rule. How is a political party formed? What is the legal status of a political party? Legally, what a political party is? Yeah, it's an organization. What kind of organization? Legal point of view. It's generally a society or a trust, registered under Indian Societies Act or Indian Trust Act. Okay, and basically political parties say that they are not public bodies because they have not been formed under any constitution or under any law of the parliament. See, anybody can form a political party. 10 of you can go and get yourself registered as a political party. You don't need the approval of the parliament or you don't need any government approval. Okay. Another argument that political parties give against bringing them under RTI is that if they are brought under RTI, then they will have to disclose funds. So they will have to disclose their strategies, their political strategies, and their election strategy, or the reasons due to which ticket was given to a particular candidate. Okay, so political parties say that we should not come under RTI because if we come under RTI, then our political opponents will misuse RTI to know our election strategy. Now, what are the arguments for bringing them under RTI?
Autonomy of collecting funds. We have considered intention collecting funds.
Okay. So, what autonomy?
Autonomy of financial relations.
Autonomy is not the word. As far as funds is concerned, so I have discussed that use of black money for political processes is the root cause of public sector corruption. Therefore, political parties need to disclose the source of their funds. Okay, so as to clean the election process, clean the political process, and therefore they should be brought under RTI. Okay, that is one of the reasons. Or क्या reason? What are the arguments for? That everybody knows who all are implementing that. For that RTI is one. They already have to disclose.
They will be accountable to people.
So the properties before it.
Transparency.
Yeah. So the main argument is that public body should not be defined in a limited manner. It should not be defined in a very parochial manner. So its definition should be much more expansive. Any body, any authority which has implications for public interest should be a public body. And political party is one of the most important institutions in a multi-party parliamentary democracy. The entire legislature and the entire executive comes from political party. All the MPs, MLAs, all the ministers, ultimately they belong to some party or the other, with the exception of the independent candidates. So that's why functioning of political parties basically serve a lot of public interest. There is a lot of public interest involved. And therefore, even though they are not constitutional or statutory bodies, still they should be brought under RTI in larger public interest. Okay, that is the first and the major argument. Second argument is regarding funds. Okay, now they should be brought under RTI, but not the political part, only the financial part. Okay, under RTI, they would be exempted from giving information with regard to their political strategies, etc., or what happened in their meetings, etc. Okay, we are not interested in the political part. Political part, do whatever you want to do. That is, you are an organization, you can decide your strategy. Okay. but the financial aspect should be brought under RTA. Only the financial aspect. From where did you get your funds? And who gave you funds? Because transparency in funding of political parties is extremely important to clean the political process, to clean the election process. Okay. Another argument is that political parties also get a lot of government support. For example, they get subsidized land, they get income tax exemption. All their donations, all their contributions that they receive is exempted from income tax. So they are benefiting at the cost of public exchequer. वो parties को नहीं मिलता. See, that category protection is given on the basis of threat perception. Threat assessment is done. ठीक है, वो बहुत लोगों को मिलता है, वो इनको भी मिला हुआ है, बाबा रामदेव को भी मिला हुआ है. ठीक है, so जितने भी all the like big people, influential people, not just from political parties, from other walks of life, even industrialists, ठीक है, all different public figures, ठीक है, उनका एक threat assessment किया जाता है, whether there is a threat to their life or not, and accordingly security is given. So it's not something to do with political parties, because political leaders, they are in public domain, and generally they have a lot of enemies, and there is threat to their life. That's why they are getting secure.
What about state funding?
Yeah, we'll read about state funding of elections when we discuss electoral reforms. We'll discuss it.
So regarding the head speeches and the public announcement, in particular for government announces,
During when model code of conduct is on.
over the elections and the elections between the
Yeah, what about it?
So, being under the SIC, then there will be also
See, that is a different issue. They are mixing two issues. That, as per the model code of conduct, they cannot announce any new policy once the model code of conduct comes into operation. Before that, they can announce. There is nothing wrong. And that political parties do not announce. The government announces. Political parties cannot frame the policies. Only the government can frame the policy. Are you understanding? So it has nothing to do with party. It has to do with the government. So, yeah. So the point I was making is that political parties receive a lot of benefits at the cost of public exchequer, at the cost of people, and therefore they should be designated a public body. They get income tax exemptions, they get subsidized land, etc. And for that, public resources are used. Okay? So that's why political parties should be designated as a public body, and they should be brought under RTA. Okay? So if any question comes, highlight arguments for, highlight arguments against, and then give a balanced conclusion.
So two arguments into
Two is not fixed. In this question, there are two for, two against. In some questions, there will be three. Or
okay, sir, here it's
यहाँ पर two कितना होगा? Two against
two for.
and three for. First is that the entire executive and legislature comes. Okay, that's why they have substantial implications for public interest. Second is the financial aspect. Third is that they benefit at the cost of public exchange. Okay. Okay. So we are done with transparency. How to bring about transparency in governance, how to strengthen transparency in governance. We have discussed various reforms that need to take place in RTA. Okay. Next concept is accountability. How to bring about or how to strengthen accountability in governance. We will take a break here. You needed 4:45, 10 minutes. Okay. We'll have the class till 6:15. Okay. By this weekend, your course will be finished, by Friday or Saturday. Okay. We are doing the governance part, civil services part now. We have to deal accountability, citizen-centric administration. Then we will discuss corruption, probity in public life. Okay, then we will discuss good governance reforms, electoral reforms, parliamentary reforms, judicial reforms. Okay, and the last 2 or 3 days, then we will do case studies. We will practice case studies. Okay, case studies is nothing but the application of whatever we are studying now. So we will discuss previous year case studies. We will discuss around 25 cases in class, all previous year UPSC case studies. Okay, the best way to prepare for UPSC is through previous year question papers. So we have around how many years of question papers before us? 5 years. So we have 30 cases before us. Every year 6 cases now. So out of those we will discuss around 23, 24, 25 around 22, 23, 24 around in the class. Okay. So last 2 or 3 days we will discuss cases. So by Friday or Saturday, I am hoping that the syllabus will be covered. Then one test and take on the entire syllabus. Okay. These test papers that you have given today, I will see them today and then we will briefly discuss either tomorrow or day after. Okay. Yeah, we will meet in 10 minutes.
Whichever the topics I read, lack of clarity. I do not get the whole picture of it. I have read many things in RTA, but I do not get the clarity of the things.
Clarity of the things doesn't. What are
If I remember that, I cannot remember the whole picture of the RTA.
That is because of lack of vision.
For example, I have revised many times the other considerations. Even if I know, I try to remember that, I cannot remember the whole thing.
Why you cannot remember? Is there some problem with the memory or?
Nothing sir, memory is good. But if I remember now, I cannot remember. I feel that I cannot remember. But
When you write, when you remember? It's fine. All of us face that problem. We think that we don't remember, but when it comes to writing, it automatically comes to our mind. That is not the issue. Again, it's a question. Whenever, if you will read it multiple times, you will be able to remember it more effectively. So the more times you read, the more comfortable you will become with a particular topic. So it's a question of just reading something again and again. Many times we also feel that we do not remember something, but when we start writing, it automatically starts coming